Picture this. You're crouched beside a dying fire in rural Anhui province. Your stomach hollow from 3 days of eating nothing but rice, water, and hope. The winter of 1847 has been merciless, killing the crops, freezing the wells, and now threatening to claim your family one by one. Your father sits across from you in the smoky darkness, his weathered hands trembling as he stares at a piece of crumpled paper. The moneylender's final notice: pay the debt by the new moon, or lose everything: the land, the house, even the few chickens scratching in the frozen yard. Outside, your two younger brothers sleep fitfully on a bed of straw, their breath forming small clouds in the bitter air. Their ribs show through their thin cotton shirts, sharp reminders of how little food remains in the wooden bowl that once seemed bottomless. You've been 16 for exactly 47 days. You know this because you've been counting since the harvest failed, marking each sunrise on the wall with a piece of charcoal, somehow believing that keeping track of time might give you control over what's coming. But time moves differently when you're starving. Days stretch like years, while the space between meals shrinks to nothing. Meili, your father says, and something in his voice makes your chest tighten. He only uses your full name when the news is serious: when grandfather died, when the tax collector came, when mother lost the baby last spring. Merchant Zhang is coming tomorrow. You know Merchant Zhang. Everyone in the village knows him. He arrives every few months in his wooden cart, leaving with girls and returning with silver. The families left behind speak of their daughters in past tense, as if they died rather than simply traveled to the cities. When younger children ask where their sisters went, parents point toward the mountains and say vague things about opportunities and better lives. But you've seen the mothers crying at the village well. You've watched them clutch photographs of daughters they'll never hold again, whispering prayers to ancestors they hope might somehow reach across the vast distances that separate families from their souled children. These women age quickly, their faces carved hollow by a particular kind of grief that has no name, because speaking it aloud would make it real. The fire crackles, sending sparks up through the hole in the roof, where proper families have tiles. Your father stares into the flames as if they might reveal some other solution, some path that doesn't lead through the marketplace, where human beings are valued by weight and youth and the straightness of their teeth. But the mathematics are simple and cruel. One daughter equals enough silver to feed two sons through winter. One girl's life stretched across the scale against two boys' survival. The Wang family needs help with their silk workshop, your father continues, his voice carefully neutral. Good work, steady meals. You'd learn a valuable trade. His words carry the hollow ring of someone trying to convince himself as much as you. Neither of you mentions that the Wang family lives 3 provinces away, or that girls who go to work in silk workshops rarely send letters home. You nod, because what else can you do? Argue that your life has value beyond its silver weight? Insist that education and dreams matter more than your brother's empty stomachs? You've been helping in the kitchen since you could reach the stove, sewing by candlelight to earn coins for the family pot, reading the few books your grandfather left behind when he thought your parents weren't watching. But none of these accomplishments change the basic arithmetic of survival. Your mother appears in the doorway, her face a mask of careful blankness. She's been practicing this expression for weeks. You realize learning to hide the trembling in her hands, the way her breath catches when she looks at you. Merchant Zhang offers fair prices, she says, the words coming out like stones dropping into still water. The Chen family's daughter sends money home every month. She doesn't mention that the Chen family's daughter was sold 3 years ago and hasn't been seen since, or that the money they receive arrives with no return address and no personal message, just silver coins wrapped in cloth that could come from anywhere, anyone. You want to ask questions that have no safe answers. What happens to girls who can't work in silk workshops? What if you get sick? What if the Wang family decides they don't need help anymore? What if? What if? What if? But these questions would force your parents to confront possibilities they can't afford to consider. So instead, you sit in silence while your father studies the piece of paper that somehow grants a stranger the right to own you. The wind picks up outside, rattling the wooden shutters and sending cold air through the gaps in the walls. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the sound of another family's door closing, probably another father making another impossible choice. These sounds carry differently in winter, sharper, more final, as if the cold makes every decision irreversible. You think about the books hidden under your sleeping mat. Stories of women who traveled to distant courts and became scholars, poets, advisors to emperors. But those were different times, or maybe different worlds entirely. In your world, women's value decreases with every year past 16, and education only matters if it makes you more useful to whoever purchases your contract. As the fire dies to embers, your father finally speaks the words that have been hanging in the air like smoke. Merchant Zhang will examine you at dawn. The morning sun hasn't cleared the mountains when Merchant Zhang's cart rumbles into your village, its wooden wheels grinding against frozen earth with the sound of inevitability. You stand in your family's courtyard wearing your cleanest dress, which isn't very clean, while your mother braids your hair with fingers that won't stop shaking. Merchant Zhang climbs down from his cart, with the careful movements of someone who understands exactly how much he's worth and why. His quilted jacket is lined with fox fur, his boots are made from leather that doesn't crack in winter, and his hands are soft in the way that comes from never having worked in fields or factories. But it's his eyes that tell the real story, the calculating gaze of someone who's learned to see human beings as investments walking around in temporary packaging. Healthy color, he observes, circling you like a farmer examining livestock. Good teeth? Your father nods quickly, and you're instructed to open your mouth wide so Merchant Zhang can peer inside, checking for rot or gaps that might affect your value. His breath smells like expensive tobacco and morning wine, the privileges of someone whose money comes from other people's desperation. 3 other girls from neighboring families stand nearby with their parents, each trying to look strong and capable while simultaneously appearing docile enough not to cause problems. You recognize Li Wei from the village school. Before it closed 2 years ago, she used to help you with mathematics, while you helped her with reading. Now you avoid each other's eyes, both understanding that acknowledging your shared situation would make it real in ways none of you can handle. Merchant Zhang pulls out a leather journal and begins recording details about each girl: age, height, family background, special skills. When he reaches you, he asks your father about your education, and you watch your father's face struggle between pride and concern. Reading is valuable in a servant, but too much learning can make girls difficult to manage. She knows her letters, your father says carefully, can do simple accounts. But she's obedient, never causes trouble. Each word feels like a stone added to a scale that's weighing your future against your family's survival. You want to scream that you know poetry, that you can calculate interest rates, that you've read philosophy books in your grandfather's collection. But intelligence is a double-edged gift in the marketplace for human beings. Excellent. Merchant Zhang makes a note in his journal. Educated servants are very popular in the provincial capitals. The magistrate families like girls who can help with correspondence. He doesn't mention what kind of correspondence, or why educated girls command higher prices in certain establishments that don't discuss their business practices in public. The negotiation begins in earnest, conducted in the careful language of people pretending they're not discussing the sale of children. Merchant Zhang speaks of placement fees and training investments, while your father talks about opportunities and better futures. But the silver tales that change hands tell the true story: you're worth exactly 22 pieces of silver. minus Merchant Zhang's commission for arranging your transportation and sale to the final buyer. Your mother appears with a small bundle containing your few possessions: 2 cotton dresses, a pair of cloth shoes, and the jade hairpin your grandmother gave you before she died. These items will follow you to whatever destination Merchant Zhang has in mind, but they'll be the only pieces of your old life permitted to make the journey. The Wang Silk Workshop is very reputable, Merchant Zhang assures your parents, though something in his smile doesn't reach his eyes. Girls who work hard there have opportunities to advance, perhaps even marry into merchant families eventually. He's had practice with these reassuring lies, smoothing over the roughest edges of transactions that would otherwise be too painful for families to complete. But you catch him glancing at Li Wei with an expression that makes your stomach clench. She's prettier than you, younger by 2 years, and her family's desperation has driven them to accept a lower price. Different types of buyers pay for different qualities, and you're beginning to understand that some of those qualities have nothing to do with silk workshops or domestic service. The cart is loaded with provisions for a long journey, enough food for several weeks, thick blankets for cold nights, and a wooden chest that locks from the outside. Merchant Zhang explains that the roads can be dangerous, especially for young women traveling alone, so security precautions are necessary for everyone's protection. The way he emphasizes protection while fingering the key to the chest makes clear that the greatest danger might be escape attempts rather than bandits. As you climb into the cart beside the other girls, your father approaches with tears in his eyes. "Be good," he whispers, pressing a small coin into your palm. "Work hard, and maybe you can come home someday." Both of you know this is probably a lie, but lies can be kinder than truth when truth offers no comfort. The cart lurches forward, wheels creaking under the weight of its human cargo. Through the wooden slats, you watch your village shrink into the distance, smoke rising from cooking fires you'll never warm yourself beside again. Your mother stands in the doorway of your house, one hand pressed to her mouth, the other clutching the silver that purchased your absence from her life. Li Wei begins crying silently, tears tracking down her cheeks without sound. The older girl across from you, maybe 18 or 19, stares straight ahead with eyes that seem to have already seen too much. She whispers just loud enough for you to hear, "Don't believe anything he tells you about silk workshops." As the cart rounds a bend and your village disappears completely, Merchant Zhang begins humming a folk song about travelers finding fortune in distant cities. But his voice carries undertones that transform the cheerful melody into something that sounds almost like a funeral march. The silk workshop turns out to be a lie, wrapped in red paper and tied with golden thread. You discover this truth 3 weeks later, when Merchant Zhang's cart stops outside a compound in Nanjing, where the only silk comes from the expensive dresses worn by women who never have to work with their hands. The gates swing open to reveal a courtyard filled with girls arranged in perfect rows, their heads bowed in identical poses of submission. Some look younger than your little brothers back home, others old enough to be your mother, but they all share the same hollow expression of people who've learned to make themselves invisible. A woman in elaborate robes emerges from the main building, her face painted white as porcelain, and her smile sharp as a blade hidden in silk. "Fresh merchandise," she observes, walking among you like a general inspecting troops before battle. "This one has potential." Her finger tilts your chin upward, and you stare into eyes that hold no warmth despite their careful makeup. Good bone structure, intelligent face. The educated ones always fetch better prices once they understand their circumstances. Madame Zhou, for that's what the other girls call her, explains the rules in a voice sweet as poisoned honey. You will rise before dawn, bathe in water that's always cold, and dress in whatever clothing is provided. You will speak only when spoken to, walk only where permitted, and eat only what's placed before you. Any attempt to leave the compound will result in punishments she describes with the clinical detachment of someone discussing weather patterns. The dormitory where you sleep contains 40 narrow beds arranged so close together that rolling over means touching the girl beside you. The windows are barred, not to keep criminals out, but to keep merchandise in. At night, you listen to whispered conversations in dialects from across the empire, girls stolen from mountain villages, purchased from flood zones, collected from families facing famines that newspapers in the capital never mention. Li Wei, the girl from your village, sleeps 2 beds away. During the day, you're forbidden to acknowledge each other. But sometimes your eyes meet across the courtyard, and you see your own terror reflected back. She's lost weight since arriving, her cheeks hollow, and her hands constantly trembling. The older girls whisper that she cries in her sleep, calling for her mother in a voice that grows quieter each night. The training begins immediately. You learn to arrange flowers in patterns that supposedly bring good fortune, though the real purpose seems to be teaching your fingers to work with delicate precision. You practice calligraphy for hours, copying poems about love and devotion until your wrist aches and ink stains your fingertips black. Most importantly, you learn to serve tea with movements so graceful they appear to be dancing, every gesture designed to please eyes you're not allowed to meet. But beneath these refined skills lies darker instruction. Madame Zhou demonstrates how to apply cosmetics that make young faces appear even younger, how to walk with steps so small they suggest helplessness, how to arrange your clothing to display exactly the right amount of innocence mixed with availability. These lessons are taught with the same matter-of-fact tone used for flower arrangement, as if the sexualization of children were just another domestic skill. The worst part is the way the training rewrites your understanding of your own body. Your hair becomes a tool for attracting attention, your voice an instrument for creating desire, your very presence reduced to its commercial potential. You begin to see yourself through the calculating eyes of potential buyers, measuring your worth in the currency of male approval and female submission. Some girls adapt quickly to this transformation, learning to smile on command and giggle at jokes that aren't funny. Others resist until hunger and exhaustion wear down their defiance. A few simply disappear one night, and the remaining girls are warned not to ask questions about empty beds or missing faces. The message is clear. Cooperation extends your life. Rebellion shortens it. The compound's real purpose becomes clearer during the evening hours, when well-dressed men arrive for what Madame Zhou calls viewing sessions. These potential buyers examine the girls with the careful attention of shoppers considering expensive purchases, asking questions about age, background, and special talents. You learn to stand perfectly still during these inspections, knowing that fidgeting or showing fear can affect your market value. During one such session, a portly merchant in silk robes examines you with particular interest. This one has fire in her eyes. He tells Madame Zhou, "I like them spirited at first. Makes the breaking more satisfying." His laugh sends ice through your veins, and you understand for the first time that your education and intelligence aren't advantages here. They're challenges that certain men pay extra to overcome. That night, lying in the dark, listening to Li Wei's muffled sobs, you begin planning your escape. The bars on the windows are old iron, possibly weak enough to bend. The guards change shifts just before dawn, leaving a brief window when the courtyard is unmonitored. The wall facing the street is high, but climbable if you can reach the decorative stonework near the roof. But the girl in the bed beside you, Chen Mei, catches you studying the window and shakes her head almost imperceptibly. Later, when the others are sleeping, she whispers her story. 3 escape attempts, each ending in recapture and punishment that left scars she shows you in the moonlight. They always catch runners. She breathes. And they make examples of the ones who try. As dawn approaches and another day of training begins, you realize that the silk workshop was never a destination. It was a story told to make the journey bearable. The real business conducted in this compound has nothing to do with textiles, and everything to do with a market where young bodies are the primary commodity. You're not learning a trade. You're being prepared for sale to men whose desires have nothing to do with domestic service or honest labor. The sound of approaching footsteps in the hallway announces that Madame Zhou is coming for the morning inspection, and you arrange your face into the mask of compliance you're learning to wear. But underneath that carefully constructed expression, something harder is taking shape. Not the hopeless resignation she expects, but a cold determination to survive whatever comes next. The buyers arrive on a Tuesday morning, when autumn rain turns the courtyard into a mirror that reflects faces you're learning not to recognize as your own. 6 months of training have transformed you into something Madame Zhou calls premium merchandise. A girl who can recite poetry while serving tea, who knows which herbs treat headaches and which silk patterns indicate good fortune, whose education makes her valuable to men who collect intelligence along with innocence. Master Liu enters the compound with the measured steps of someone accustomed to purchasing human beings. His silk robes are embroidered with dragons that seem to writhe in the lamplight, and his jade rings click against his walking stick as he examines the girls arranged for his inspection. Behind him walks a younger man with nervous hands and hungry eyes. His nephew, you learn later, being introduced to the family business of acquiring and disposing of women. This one shows promise, Master Liu says, stopping in front of you. His voice carries the cultured tones of someone educated in classical literature, but his eyes hold the cold calculation of a merchant evaluating livestock. Intelligent face, good breeding in the bone structure. Can she read financial documents? The question sends warning signals through your mind, because household servants rarely need such skills. Madame Zhou produces a ledger filled with shipping records and asks you to read aloud. Your voice remains steady as you decipher entries documenting the movement of silk, tea, and other goods through ports along the southern coast. But your hands tremble slightly when you realize that some entries record human cargo alongside commercial merchandise, girls listed by age and origin as if they were bolts of fabric or sacks of rice. Excellent. Master Liu nods approvingly. Literacy adds considerable value in my line of business. The foreign merchants prefer educated companions when conducting negotiations. He doesn't explain what kind of negotiations require the presence of young Chinese women, but his nephew's smirk suggests purposes that have nothing to do with trade agreements or cultural exchange. The price negotiation unfolds with the polite formality of a business transaction between equals, though only one party has anything to lose. 45 silver taels, more than your father earned in 2 years of farming, changes hands while you stand motionless, trained to show no reaction as your ownership transfers from one stranger to another. The sum feels enormous and worthless simultaneously, a fortune that buys your body while reducing your humanity to a line item in someone's account book. Master Lu's household reveals itself gradually during the 3-day journey to his estate outside Guangzhou. The other servants speak in careful whispers about girls who arrived with great fanfare and disappeared without explanation, about rooms in the compound where screaming is soundproofed and visitors arrive under cover of darkness. You travel in a covered palanquin that prevents escape while maintaining the fiction that you're an honored guest rather than recently purchased property. The compound sits on a hill overlooking the Pearl River, its gardens designed to impress foreign visitors with displays of classical Chinese culture. Pavilions connected by winding paths showcase art collections and libraries that demonstrate Master Liu's refinement, while hidden buildings house activities that would scandal the Confucian scholars whose wisdom decorates his walls. Everything is calculated to present a facade of respectability covering enterprises that operate beyond the reach of imperial law. Your first week reveals the true nature of Master Lu's business empire. Ships arrive regularly at his private dock, carrying not just silk and porcelain, but human cargo from across Southeast Asia. Young women from Vietnam, Thailand, and Burma are processed through his compound like any other import, examined for quality, trained for specific markets, and redistributed to buyers throughout the region. You're not just a servant, you're part of an international network that treats women as tradable commodities. The foreign merchants who visit Master Liu's estate speak in languages you don't recognize, but their intentions are clear from the way they examine the women presented for their consideration. Dutch traders with ships bound for Java, Portuguese captains heading to Macau, English merchants whose destinations remain mysterious but lucrative. They pay in silver, gold, and sometimes exotic goods from distant colonies, their money transforming Chinese girls into international merchandise. Your education proves useful in ways that make your stomach clench. Master Liu requires you to translate conversations between Chinese sellers and foreign buyers. Your language skills facilitating transactions that separate families and destroy lives. You learn to speak of human beings as units of merchandise, to discuss shipping schedules for delicate cargo, to negotiate prices for women as if they were spices or textiles. Each translation feels like swallowing poison, but refusing would mean joining the girls whose resistance ended in unmarked graves. Li Wei arrives at the compound 2 months after you, her spirit broken by experiences she can't articulate even in whispers. She's been assigned to the kitchen staff, her youth and fragility making her suitable for domestic work rather than the international trade that consumes prettier girls. Sometimes you catch glimpses of her in the gardens, moving like a ghost through tasks that keep her hands busy while her mind retreats to places no one can reach. The most horrifying discovery comes when you're asked to organize Master Liu's private correspondence. Letters from business partners across the empire detailed the systematic procurement of girls from disaster zones, military conflicts, and economic depressions. Agents embedded in refugee camps identify candidates, while corrupt officials facilitate transportation and documentation. The network operates with the efficiency of any legitimate business, except its raw materials are human lives and its profits are measured in suffering. One letter from an associate in Beijing describes a new opportunity. Families displaced by flooding in Henan province are selling daughters for a fraction of normal prices. The correspondent suggests moving quickly before other buyers realize the potential, treating human desperation like a commodity whose value fluctuates with supply and demand. The casual tone of these discussions, as if arranging for tea purchases rather than child trafficking, reveals how thoroughly the participants have dehumanized their victims. Your own fate becomes clearer when Master Liu summons you to his private study one evening. Maps covering the walls show shipping routes, connecting Chinese ports to destinations across the Pacific, while ledgers record the movement of special merchandise to buyers in California, Hawaii, and South America. Chinese women, it seems, are particularly prized in frontier regions where female companionship commands premium prices from lonely miners and isolated merchants. You've proven quite valuable, Master Liu says, his tone suggesting satisfaction with a profitable investment. Captain Morrison sails for San Francisco next month and has specifically requested educated Chinese women for his American clients. The gold rush has created exceptional demand for feminine company, and educated girls can command prices that justify the transportation costs. He speaks as if offering you an opportunity rather than selling you into sexual slavery on another continent. The ship that will carry you to America sits anchored in the harbor like a floating prison, its hold modified to transport human cargo with the same efficiency used for silk and tea. You've learned that girls who board these vessels rarely survive the journey intact, and those who do arrive face lives of prostitution in mining camps, where women are outnumbered 100 to 1, and survival depends entirely on male protection that must be earned through submission and endurance. But tonight, as you organize shipping manifests that list women alongside crates of porcelain, your fingers find something unexpected among Master Lu's papers. A detailed map of the compound showing guard positions, patrol schedules, and most importantly, a drainage tunnel that connects the cellars to the river. Escape has always seemed impossible, but the map reveals possibilities you hadn't considered, paths that might lead not just to freedom, but to evidence that could expose the entire network. Chen Mei appears in the doorway, her face pale with terror. "They're loading the ship tonight," she whispers. "Captain Morrison wants to sail with the morning tide." Through the window, you can see lanterns moving toward the dock where your floating prison waits. In 6 hours, you'll either be chained in a ship's hold bound for America or dead in the river trying to reach the other side. The choice is no choice at all. Death in familiar waters is preferable to slavery in foreign lands, and maybe, just maybe, you can carry with you the evidence needed to destroy the network that consumes girls like kindling to feed an international market's appetite for disposable women. The drainage tunnel smells like centuries of accumulated despair. Its walls slick with moisture that might be water, or might be the tears of girls who tried this route before you. Chen Mei's hand grips yours so tightly that her fingernails draw blood. But neither of you dares speak as you crawl through darkness toward what might be freedom, or might be a more creative form of death. Behind you, the compound erupts in shouts and lantern light as guards discover your empty beds. Dogs bark in the distance, their howls echoing off stone walls like the voices of hunting demons. Master Liu's voice cuts through the chaos, screaming orders in the controlled fury of someone watching valuable merchandise slip through his fingers. The sound drives you forward through muck that soaks your knees and elbows, each movement bringing you closer to the river or closer to capture. The tunnel opens into a culvert that feeds stormwater directly into the Pearl River. The current runs fast here, swollen by autumn rains that have turned the usually placid water into a churning mass of debris and mud. Chen Mei stares at the rushing water with terror she never learned to swim, and the river represents certain death rather than possible escape. But behind you, the sound of approaching search parties grows louder, and staying means returning to Master Liu's compound in chains. "I can't," she whispers, tears mixing with the grime on her face. "I'd rather die here than drown out there." You understand her choice even as it breaks something inside your chest. The river offers maybe a 10% chance of survival, but going back offers 0% chance of remaining human. Some mathematics are simple, even when the equations involve your own life. You embrace her quickly, pressing the stolen documents against her chest. "Hide these," you whisper. "If I don't make it, find someone who can read them. Someone who might care." The papers contain shipping records, correspondence with foreign buyers, detailed accounts of the international trafficking network that spans 3 continents. They're evidence that could destroy Master Liu's empire, but only if they reach hands willing to act on what they reveal. The water hits your body like a physical blow, cold enough to stop your heart and fast enough to sweep you downstream before you can catch your breath. Your cotton dress becomes a weight trying to drag you under, but you learn to swim in the village pond back when you were someone's daughter instead of someone's property. The current carries you away from the compound's lights, past fishing boats anchored for the night, toward the wider river where ships wait to carry human cargo to distant shores. Swimming downstream requires no effort. The water does all the work while you focus on keeping your head above the surface and avoiding the logs and debris that could crack your skull or trap you beneath the waves. Your body grows numb from cold, but numbness is better than the pain that would come from thinking too clearly about what you're attempting. The mathematical probability of survival doesn't improve by dwelling on the statistics. The foreign ships anchored in deeper water loom out of the darkness like floating islands of another world. Their masts tower above you, rigged with lines and canvas that snap in the wind like the wings of giant birds. Lanterns burn on their decks, casting pools of yellow light that don't quite reach the water where you struggle to stay afloat. These vessels carry legitimate cargo alongside their human merchandise, maintaining the fiction of respectability that allows the trade to flourish. You recognize Captain Morrison's ship by its distinctive figurehead, a carved woman with arms outstretched toward horizons she'll never reach. Tomorrow morning, this vessel would have carried you to California, along with a dozen other girls destined for brothels in San Francisco's gold fields. Now it serves as a landmark, guiding you toward the opposite shore, where fishing villages might offer temporary sanctuary, or at least a place to die on dry land. The river widens as you approach the main channel, its current growing stronger and more unpredictable. Your strength is fading, your arms feel like lead weights, and your legs struggle to maintain the rhythm that keeps you moving forward. The cold has seeped so deep into your bones that you can no longer feel your fingers or toes, and your vision blurs as exhaustion replaces adrenaline as your primary companion. A fishing boat materializes out of the darkness, its hull black against the black water. The elderly fisherman steering it sees you thrashing in the current and throws a rope without asking questions. His weathered hands pull you aboard, with the matter-of-fact efficiency of someone who's rescued drowning people before, though probably not many who were escaping from Master Liu's compound in the middle of the night. "Stupid girl," he mutters, wrapping you in canvas that smells like fish and honest labor. River's no place for swimming after dark. Current could have carried you to the sea, but his voice carries kindness beneath the gruff words, and his cabin offers warmth that gradually returns feeling to your frozen limbs. He asks no questions about why you were in the water or where you came from, understanding that some stories are better left untold. The fishing village where he takes you exists in the margins between legitimate commerce and criminal enterprise. Its inhabitants know better than to ask uncomfortable questions about Master Liu's business, but they also know that survival sometimes requires helping people who oppose that business. You're given dry clothes, hot soup, and a place to sleep while your body recovers from its ordeal in the river. But safety proves temporary when Master Liu's agents arrive the next morning, offering silver rewards for information about escaped merchandise. The village headman faces an impossible choice between protecting a stranger and maintaining the fragile peace that keeps his people alive. His decision becomes clear when he approaches your hiding place with apologetic eyes and coins that jingle in his pocket like 30 pieces of silver. The capture happens quickly, rough hands dragging you from the fishing hut where you'd imagined finding sanctuary. Master Liu's men bind your wrists with silk cords that feel softer than rope but hold just as tightly, their expensive material a reminder that even your restraints reflect your commercial value. The villagers watch your recapture with faces that reveal nothing, their expressions carefully neutral in the way of people who've learned that showing emotion can be dangerous. The journey back to Master Liu's compound takes place in a covered cart that prevents escape while hiding the evidence of his recovered property from curious eyes. Your fellow prisoners include 3 other girls who attempted various forms of rebellion, one who tried to poison herself, another who attacked a buyer with kitchen scissors, a third who simply refused to cooperate until starvation made resistance impossible. All of you now face punishment, designed to serve as education for the other girls still held in the compound. Master Liu waits in his private study, surrounded by the art and literature that mark him as a cultured gentleman, rather than a merchant of human flesh. His calm demeanor is more frightening than any display of anger would be, suggesting someone who views punishment as a business necessity rather than an emotional response. "Did you really believe the river would carry you to freedom?" he asks with genuine curiosity, as if your escape attempt were an interesting philosophical problem rather than an act of desperate resistance. The punishment begins immediately. Not physical torture that might damage valuable merchandise, but psychological techniques designed to break spirit while preserving market appeal. You're placed in solitary confinement, in a windowless cell, where the only light comes from a small lamp that burns just bright enough to prevent total darkness. Food arrives irregularly, sometimes twice a day, sometimes not for days at a time, destroying your sense of time and leaving you constantly uncertain about when the next meal might appear. The isolation is interrupted only by visits from Master Liu himself, who arrives to discuss your value as an investment and the cost of your attempted escape. He calculates the expenses involved in your recapture payments to informants, compensation for the fishing village's cooperation, wages for the agents who tracked you down. These costs will be added to your purchase price, extending your period of servitude indefinitely. Captain Morrison was quite disappointed. He mentions casually, during one visit, he'd specifically requested educated girls for his American clients, and your absence left him 1 unit short of his ordered merchandise. Fortunately, we were able to substitute another girl, though her lack of English skills reduced the overall value of the shipment. He speaks as if discussing a clerical error, rather than the destruction of another human life. But the most devastating revelation comes when he produces Chen Mei's lifeless body, carried into your cell, like evidence in a trial. Your friend chose death over cooperation, he explains with clinical detachment. The documents you gave her were quite interesting, detailed records of my business operations that would have been embarrassing if they'd reached the wrong hands. Fortunately, she proved unwilling to reveal their location, even under considerable persuasion. Chen Mei's face is peaceful in death, finally free from the fear that haunted her living eyes. But her sacrifice weighs on you like physical chains, adding guilt to the despair that already threatens to crush whatever remains of your spirit. She died protecting evidence that might have exposed the network, destroying thousands of lives. And now, that evidence lies buried with her body in an unmarked grave. The weeks of isolation stretch into months, punctuated only by Master Liu's periodic visits and the gradual realization that your escape attempt has fundamentally altered your value as merchandise. Educated girls who attempt rebellion become damaged goods, suitable only for buyers who specifically enjoy breaking spirits along with bodies. Your literacy, once an asset, now marks you as a potential source of trouble requiring special handling. When you're finally returned to the general population of the compound, you discover that your failed escape has become a cautionary tale used to discourage other girls from attempting resistance. Your punishment serves as education for new arrivals, demonstrating the futility of opposing a system designed to crush individual will through systematic degradation. You've become both victim and unwilling instructor in the techniques of despair. But something unexpected has happened during your months of isolation. The fear that once paralyzed you has transformed into something colder and more durable. Not hope, which seems naive, but a patient determination to document what you've witnessed. If you cannot escape this system, perhaps you can at least record its workings for someone who might someday have the power to destroy it. The Taiping Rebellion reaches Guangzhou like wildfire, consuming everything in its path, and suddenly Master Liu's carefully ordered world crumbles into chaos that no amount of silver can control. The rebel army's approach transforms the compound from a prison into a trap, where captors and captives alike face the same uncertain fate under heaven's will. You watch from your dormitory window as smoke rises from the city below, columns of black ash marking the destruction of government buildings and the houses of wealthy collaborators. The foreign ships that once carried human cargo away from Chinese shores now flee toward open water, their captains unwilling to risk valuable vessels in a war zone where the rules of commerce no longer apply. Master Liu paces through his compound like a caged animal, alternately screaming at servants who can offer no solutions and consulting maps that show rebel forces advancing from 3 directions simultaneously. His international trafficking network, built on corruption and official protection, collapses as the imperial authorities who facilitated his business either flee or join the rebellion. The careful balance of bribes and threats that sustained his empire means nothing when the government itself faces extinction. The compound's guards begin deserting in groups, taking their weapons and whatever valuables they can carry before the rebels arrive to distribute revolutionary justice. Master Liu offers increasingly desperate bribes to persuade them to stay, but money becomes worthless when survival depends on being on the winning side of a civil war. By the third day, only a handful of the most loyal servants remain, and their loyalty wavers with each new report of rebel victories. Your fellow prisoners react to the approaching chaos with emotions ranging from terror to cautious hope. Some fear that rebel armies will prove no kinder to enslaved women than imperial forces were, while others see the warfare as an opportunity for escape that might not come again in their lifetimes. The youngest girls huddle together for comfort, while the oldest begin making plans that assume the compound's security will soon collapse entirely. Li Wei finds you during the evening meal, her eyes bright with something that might be madness, or might be the first genuine hope she's felt since leaving home. The kitchen stores are unguarded, she whispers. Cook fled this morning with half the silver. We could take food, weapons, anything we need for traveling. Her transformation from broken victim to potential survivor happens so quickly it takes your breath away. But Master Liu has one final card to play in his desperate game of survival. He summons the remaining girls to his study, where maps now compete for space with hastily packed chests of gold and documents. The rebels will show no mercy to enemies of the people, he announces, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Your only hope lies in reaching the foreign settlements in Hong Kong, where British law offers protection from Chinese justice. His proposal is simple and monstrous. He will provide transportation and documentation for 20 girls to reach British territory, where they'll be sold to European brothels rather than facing probable death at rebel hands. The choice he offers is between certain slavery under foreign masters or uncertain fate under Chinese revolutionaries. It's the same false mathematics that has defined your entire captivity, dressed up as rescue rather than continued exploitation. Some girls accept immediately, their spirits so broken that any certainty seems preferable to the unknown dangers of rebellion and warfare. Others refuse, choosing to face whatever comes with the knowledge that they'll die as free women rather than live as foreign property. The division splits the compound's population, creating tensions that mirror the larger civil war consuming the empire. You spend the night considering options that all lead through different forms of hell. Hong Kong represents continued enslavement under British rule, but staying means facing rebel forces who might view all inhabitants of Master Liu's compound as enemies deserving death. The papers hidden in your mattress replacement documents you've slowly reconstructed from memory could serve as evidence against the trafficking network, but only if you survive long enough to deliver them to authorities willing to act. The decision becomes academic when rebel scouts appear at the compound gates just after dawn, their worn uniforms and improvised weapons marking them as farmers turned soldiers rather than professional troops. They demand surrender of all inhabitants for questioning about their roles in supporting the corrupt imperial system. Master Liu's final escape plan crumbles as quickly as his criminal empire, leaving everyone trapped between revolution and retribution. The rebel leader who enters the compound carries himself with the confident authority of someone fighting for a cause rather than personal profit. Commander Zhang, no relation to the merchant who first purchased you, listens with growing anger as you describe the international trafficking network that operated under imperial protection. His questions are sharp and intelligent, revealing someone who understands how corruption facilitated crimes against the Chinese people. These documents, he says, examining the reconstructed papers you've hidden for months, contain evidence of treason against the people. Selling Chinese women to foreign devils violates every principle of righteousness and justice. His voice carries the moral certainty of someone who sees the current war as a cleansing fire that will burn away decades of crime, accumulated corruption, and injustice. Master Liu's trial takes place in the compound courtyard, with his former victims serving as witnesses against him. The proceedings follow revolutionary justice rather than imperial law, quick, decisive, and focused on the political implications of his crimes rather than their commercial aspects. His trafficking network is condemned not just as criminal enterprise, but as collaboration with foreign enemies seeking to degrade and exploit Chinese civilization. The evidence you provide helps convict not just Master Liu, but the entire network of officials, merchants, and foreign buyers who sustained the international trade in human beings. Your testimony, delivered in the clear voice of someone who has survived the system's worst brutalities, becomes part of the Revolutionary Tribunal's record of imperial corruption and foreign exploitation. But justice proves complicated when applied to the compound's other inhabitants. Some guards and servants were clearly willing participants in criminal enterprise, while others were themselves victims of economic desperation and limited choices. The revolution's promise of equality struggles with the practical challenges of distinguishing between perpetrators and victims in a system designed to blur such distinctions. Li Wei testifies about her experiences with remarkable composure, her voice steady as she describes the systematic dehumanization that transformed village girls into commercial merchandise. Her survival has left her with strength none of you expected, and her words carry the moral authority of someone who refused to let suffering destroy her essential humanity. The tribunal listens with visible emotion as she catalogs the methods used to break spirits and reshape identities. The foreign ships in the harbor become targets of revolutionary justice, their crews questioned about their role in transporting human cargo to international markets. Several captains produce manifest documents that list women alongside tea and silk, providing additional evidence of the systematic nature of the trafficking trade. The British authorities in Hong Kong protest these investigations, claiming violations of international commerce law, but their complaints carry little weight with revolutionaries, who reject imperial legal frameworks entirely. Your own future emerges gradually, through conversations with revolutionary administrators who are working to rebuild society according to principles of equality and justice. Your literacy and first-hand knowledge of international trafficking networks make you valuable as a witness and potential educator, someone who can help others understand how corruption facilitated systematic exploitation of Chinese women and children. The compound itself is transformed into a school where former victims can learn trades and skills that will allow them to support themselves without depending on male protection or patronage. The buildings that once housed human merchandise become workshops for weaving, printing, and other forms of productive labor. The transformation feels like physical proof that systems of oppression can be dismantled and replaced with structures that serve human dignity rather than commercial profit. Master Liu's execution takes place at sunset, on a platform erected in the market square, where he once conducted business with foreign buyers. His final words express no remorse for the lives he destroyed, only regret that his profitable enterprise has been interrupted by political upheaval. He dies as he lived, calculating the commercial implications of his circumstances rather than confronting their moral dimensions. The revolution ultimately fails, crushed by imperial forces aided by foreign military intervention. The Taiping Rebellion's defeat restores the old order and the old corruptions, including the international trafficking networks that briefly faced revolutionary justice. Many of the officials convicted during the revolutionary tribunals return to power, and the foreign buyers resume their commercial activities with barely a pause. But something irreversible has happened during those months of revolutionary government. The documentation you helped preserve survives in hidden archives, creating a historical record of systematic human trafficking that will eventually reach reformers and activists in later generations. Your testimony becomes part of a growing body of evidence that will someday support international efforts to combat the trade in human beings. You rebuild your life slowly in the years following the revolution's defeat, working as a teacher in village schools where girls learn to read and write despite cultural pressures that favor male education. Your experiences have given you credibility with families who might otherwise resist educating daughters, and your literacy becomes a tool for expanding opportunities rather than enabling exploitation. The letters you write to international anti-slavery organizations eventually reach reformers in Britain and America who are working to expose the global dimensions of human trafficking. Your first-hand accounts provide crucial evidence for activists seeking to pressure governments into taking action against the international trade in women and children. The compound's account books and shipping records become exhibits in congressional hearings and parliamentary investigations. Li Wei becomes a midwife and healer, using traditional medicine combined with knowledge gained through survival to help other women navigate the dangers of a world that still treats them as property rather than people. Her quiet strength inspires others who have survived trauma, proving that dignity can be reconstructed even after systematic attempts to destroy it through dehumanization and abuse. The transformation of your suffering into testimony, your survival into service, represents a form of justice that transcends the revolutionary tribunals and imperial courts that claimed authority over your fate. The system that consumed your childhood and sold your body like merchandise ultimately failed to destroy the voice that now speaks for those who didn't survive to tell their own stories. As you write these final words by lamplight in a school where girls learn mathematics and literature instead of submission and silence, you understand that some victories are measured not in battles won or governments overthrown, but in voices that refuse to be silenced, and truths that survive long after the systems that created them have crumbled into dust. The revolution may have failed, but the revolution's evidence lives on in every girl who learns to read, every woman who refuses to accept that her value is determined by men who see her as merchandise, rather than as human being deserving dignity and choice. The market squares are different now, but the appetite for disposable women persists in forms both ancient and modern. Your words will outlive your body, carrying forward the testimony of those who learned that the price of silence is always higher than the cost of speaking truth to power, regardless of the consequences that truth might bring.